What, Mr. Doggy? 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 Thank you very much, guys. That was 12 minutes of the song I used to sing to my dog when I used to walk him. Today would have been his 12th birthday. He died last September. So I apologize for putting you guys through that, but I hope you enjoyed 12 minutes of What Mr. Doggy. That is the 12-minute extended single of What Mr. Doggy. Thank you, guys. This is Jack Does a Monologue or Song. Normally, I am doing a monologue or I'm doing a song, but today is, again, the unofficial birthday, i.e. the birthday that kind of I came up with to mark his birth when I had gotten him because I wanted to have a day I could celebrate his birthday. So today would have been his 12th birthday, and I miss my dog a lot. I got a silly little fucking Spirit Pieces glass pendant that I mixed his ashes into. I am drinking a whiskey and soda. I feel like Khootz would have loved to have a whiskey and soda with me one last time, or at least taste my whiskey and soda. And yeah, man, I mean, if you ever get a dog, there's really nothing like it. There's really nothing like having a dog. All right, so guys, thank you very much. Every night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, Jack Does a Monologue or Song. I promise tomorrow I will be doing a monologue. But thank you for hanging out with me. I guess happy Easter to everybody. And if you got a dog, hug him and squeeze him. If you got a cat and they let you, hug them and squeeze them too. Once again, Jack Does a Monologue. Thanks for hanging out. What, Mr. Doggy? What, Mr. Doggy? What, Mr. Doggy? What, Mr. Doggy? What, Mr. Doggy?